All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at a figure that has been highly anticipated. This is Transformers Generations Legacy Velocitron Speedia 500 Collection Autobot Cosmos. So this is our first figure that we're taking a look at in the Speedia 500 collection, which is a kind of an interesting little series of figures that is another subwave of legacy that is exclusive to Walmart, and basically the line is kinda supposed to be revolving around, like, Velocitron, the planet from Transformers Cybertron, the racing planet, and specifically the Speedia 500 race. But really, I mean, they've used this line as just kind of an excuse to put a lot of different figures in. Like, the only one or two that are like really relevant to that theme is the Voyager class override, and then also the kind of IDW inspired blur design. The rest of them are mostly just like other random homages and stuff like that that don't really have a whole lot to do with racing or the racing planet or anything like that. I mean, some of them are like, I guess, characters that could be in a race but are not necessarily like racing characters. But I mean, whatever. I don't really, truthfully, for myself, I don't really care what kind of box any of this stuff comes in, as long as it's an excuse to get some characters that are fun new molds. And yeah, this is one of the few actually new molds in the Speedia 500 collection, and this is our new version of Cosmos. And what's kind of fun is as a way to actually integrate him into the theme of the line, they haven't really labeled Cosmos as like a racer in the race, but they've included this little accessory with the kind of racing flag here. So he's actually the guy who waves the flag at the beginning of the race to get everyone started. That's kind of fun. I think that's a fun way to integrate Cosmos into the theme of the line, which they didn't really have to do, because again, they do this a lot where where they just have like random figures as a part of their like specific sub theme lines that don't actually have much to do with the actual sub theme. But yeah. No, this is a new mold and a new Cosmos mold. It's been a little while since we've seen a Cosmos, and the last version was pretty good. So, it's kind of nice to see a new deluxe version of him. And here he is in his little UFO flying saucer mode. I've never been totally clear on what Cosmos is actually supposed to be, because when I think about like UFOs and flying saucers, I tend to think of them having a bit more of like a glass dome bubble, not like a weird little cylindrical section like Cosmos has. But his vehicle mode is kind of a little unique thing to Cosmos, but that's okay. I think it's a nice little vehicle mode. It's a little bit like the little capsule up here, I guess, is a little bit larger than previous versions, especially like when you look at the G1 version, it was a little bit more compressed down, which I think was a fine trade-off for having him have like slightly better proportions in his robot mode. But yeah, no, I like this mode a lot. I think it works pretty well. So yeah, he does come with his little flag here and then a little gun, and the gun has a hole on the side so that you can actually plug the flag piece into it, so you can hold the barrel here and actually have that be a little flag. So that's pretty cool. For storage in this mode, unfortunately, they are having you just well, they want it like this, I guess, but they do have you just peg it onto the side, which I don't think looks good, especially with like the flag sticking up there, because like the flag notionally is supposed to be sculpted as a piece of fabric. So to have it pegged onto the side, just like awkwardly sticking up in this S pose like this, just like kind of breaks the illusion of that. I don't know, but whatever. This is nothing new to modern figures of not really given proper weapon storage. And what's kind of sucks too is that like he does have some space under here that conceivably could have been used for the weapon if they had just designed it a little bit differently. Like, he's got the space down here. He's even got this spot that kind of looks like a peg hole. So if you could if the gun was just a little bit shorter or collapsible in some way, then it probably could have stored down there. Or if it was a little shorter, it probably could have stored down here. So, I don't know. As usual, I'm kind of irritated that is not a design priority, but that is hardly unique to this figure. But yeah, no, it's a pretty good size, this little flying saucer mode, and it's definitely a nice little piece to hold in hand too. In terms of comparisons, first off, just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, just for that standard deluxe size comparison. here he is with the Thrilling 30 Cosmos, the only other previous Cosmos that I have. And like, you know, this is a really good figure too, but this one definitely hits the mark a little bit more in terms of G1 accuracy, especially like in terms of the alt mode. It definitely is a lot more G1 accurate, whereas they were trying to make this ship, I think, look a little bit cooler than Cosmos's typical alt mode, and it does, and it's a nice little alt mode, but this one definitely does look more accurate. It is kind of a shame, like the G1 toy, that it doesn't have like little wheels or anything underneath. It does just kind of sit there, and it doesn't have, as far as I can tell, it doesn't have any sort of like, you know, for a while the Generations figures were putting like little like, I guess it would be 3mm peg holes on the bottom here so that you could plug it into like, you know, one of these like, you know, typical action figure stands that has that kind of peg. It doesn't have anything like that. I'm sure you could find a way to kind of balance it. I mean, like if you're just having it sit on there with one of these clip pieces, then yeah, you can kind of do that, and it works relatively well, but it's certainly not, you know, stable on there by any means. But yeah, that's okay. It's all right that it doesn't have wheels, but it would have been kind of fun to kind of roll this little vehicle mode around. But yeah, that's what he looked like with the previous Legends Cosmos. And then for my current versions of all the other Season 2 mini-bots, here he is with Kingdom Warpath, and I want to say Power of the Primes Beachcomber, maybe Titan's Return, who can remember? Titan's Return Sea Spray, and Combiner Wars Power Glide. And yeah, you know, I think they look pretty good together. Obviously, 3 of them are Legends class figures, now 2 of them are Deluxes. You know, I think that this guy really sat in better with these ones, but you know, if we're transitioning to doing deluxe size mini bots, then I think it's nice to at least have, you know, 2 of them be deluxes for now, and then I'm sure we'll eventually get new deluxe versions of these 3 guys eventually in the future, which, you know, I really like all of these figures, so I was fine having those be, you know, my definitive versions of these guys on my shelf. But, you know, if we get new versions of these 3 that scale better with those 2, that would also be great, and it'll be certainly welcome. But yeah, that's what he looks like with the other Season 2 mini bots there. But yeah, in terms of transformation, it's actually pretty simple, but he's got some fun stuff going on. First, you want to start off by just untabbing the arms here and just folding them out a little bit, just like that, just so you can get underneath here and take these yellow panels right here and just unpeg them from the side of what will be the legs here, which allows you to then kind of take the legs and they sort of like accordion out from this section here, and this little bit folds up to kind of peg into the back of that green bit, just like that, and you can just bring it down like that. Then we can separate the legs here. Fold it down at the feet so the feet sit flat, and then take these little corner sections and actually rotate them to the back, and they just kind of latch over these little notches, these little tabs here to kind of give them a heel and lock the feet into place. Then this can be kind of tricky, but you want to take this whole section here, and this yellow piece is actually a slider. So you want to pull it out pretty much as far as it'll go, and then rotate it down just for clearance. So you can rotate this around, take this this back panel here and fold it into the body there. And then once you've done that, you can take this whole section, and there's a little tab right in there that will go into this slot. So you just want to rotate it in like that. Just like that. And I kind of wish the slider came out a little bit more, because when I lock it in like that, it does kind of make the slider look like it's being forced into kind of an angle, which seems like it could be bad for it, but it's not like drastic enough that I really think it would damage it. But it does kind of, you know, bugs me that it couldn't be taken a little farther out there. Oh, look at that. It does have one of those pegs. That's not visible. And oh, I guess it would be on the back of the actual bulb of the saucer here, but I don't know if that would be a great place to plug in a stand, because then it would have to kind of like bend down over it, but it does have one of those little pegs. That's nice. I didn't even realize that, so we can use that for robot mode. But then you want to take these little yellow sections here, and they rotate down and just kind of latch over these little tabs right here, just like that. And thankfully that connection, it seems pretty strong, because I could see that being an issue. And then from the inside of the arms here, you want to fold out the hands, unfortunately leaving kind of a hollow cavity, and I'll talk about that. But yeah, just do that on both sides. And then the one kind of bummer for me here is that he does do a little bit of cheating. in terms of looking at the top here, this actually is not the top of his head. How you get out his head here is you want to put your thumb on the back here and flip this whole panel over, and it flips around like that. That's not the most egregious cheating in the world, but it was kind of a bummer when I was looking at the images and I realized that that's not actually the top of his head like it's supposed to be. Not the end of the world, but, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, there we have Cosmos in his robot mode, and he looks fantastic. Very G1 accurate. He's got those, like, weird sort of stumpy proportions there. Great new head sculpt. Like, I liked the previous Cosmos head sculpt, but this one even puts that one to shame, making it look so much more G1 accurate. In terms of articulation, he's got a ball joint at the head here, which has a really nice range of movement just because it's a little bit higher up than it has to be. So it kind of, you know, he's got like a little recessed collar here where his head is. So he gets a pretty good range of wiggle back and forth. And then obviously rotation. The shoulders here can swivel all the way around and hinge out to the side on that separate joint there. He's got a bicep swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. The wrists can only bend in a little bit. He's got a waist cut. His hips can go forward and back, and then if you move these kind of skirts out to the side, they can go out to the side as well. It's got a thigh swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the knee, and then ankle tilt. Since you lock that piece in place, it like kind of eliminates the forward and backward tilt. I guess if you unlocked that, you can get it to have a little bit of backward tilt, but you kind of have to move this piece awkwardly out to the side. So I don't know if that's totally worth it, unless you just wanted to leave it out like this. But then I'm not sure he would be able to stand super well, just because those become his heel pieces. He stands all right. So I guess if you like that look, then he gets a little bit of backwards ankle tilt as well. But I think personally the way that they have it is better. But, you know, some options there. In terms of his weaponry, obviously he can hold his little gun here, just like that. Fits nicely in his hand, and that looks okay, although, you know, I'm probably going to put it in a box because unfortunately it does not have weapon storage really in alt mode. And then for this little flag accessory, obviously you can plug this back in, and then he can hold the actual barrel of the gun here to wave the racing flag. And what's kind of funny is, like, when they were revealing these, they what I think is really just a result of them only putting the tampo on one side, but they flipped it around. They're like, or you could make it a surrender flag. Sure, that was definitely a design intent and not just something that they realized afterwards after they only put the racing tampo on one side. Definitely. But that's okay. I mean, I think it doesn't need the tampo on both sides, and it is kind of nice to have that versatility if you don't want it to be a racing thing. I like the accessory. I just don't really like it with him because it doesn't really have any place to store in either mode, honestly. Well, no, that's not true. It does have a little peg back here, so you can store it on his back. Could probably put it there in vehicle mode too, just kind of awkwardly stick out to the side. But, you know, that's not bad storage in robot mode. But yeah, no, he's a really nice looking little figure, and I think that the articulation works pretty well. I'm a little bit bummed about the weapons, but, like, I don't necessarily need Cosmos to have weapons anyway, because he sort of seems like more of an exploratory kind of character rather than like a fighting character. The cheating with the head is kind of forgivable, just, you know, because at least it ends up in the same place. Like, it's not like a totally different thing. It's kind of interesting here is they actually put less detail on the robot mode side than they did on the vehicle mode side. If you look at the rest of the top of the little disc here, and I guess he kind of does a little bit more cheating with the wrists too, because these bits on the original Cosmos ended up being these in vehicle mode. But I don't know if you can really call that cheating, because these are just plainly visible in robot mode as well. So I guess it's just, you know, different little things that that fold away. But, you know, that's okay. But in terms of size comparisons, just for the standard one first, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. Just so you can see, he's a, you know, pretty short deluxe, which I think as he should be, because, you know, now that we're doing the mini bots as deluxes here, you know, I prefer them at least being kind of smaller. He's not quite as small as some of the other ones we've gotten so far. Like if we bring on Huffer here and Bumblebee, he's pretty much the same height as Huffer, maybe like a tiny bit shorter. So, you know, all three of them are kind of smaller than like average size deluxes, but not by too much. He's definitely at least a little bit bigger than Bumblebee, which, you know, I like. I like Bumblebee being like one of the smallest Autobots. So, you know, I think that works pretty well. And then for another G1 Minibot new figure, here he is with Warpath, and then we'll bring on Powerglide and Sea Spray and Beachcomber as well. So you can see these are kind of my current definitive versions of all of these characters on the shelf. He's a little bit shorter than Warpath, but I think they all look pretty good together. Though, like I said, you know, I think it'll be an even nicer display once we get you know, new deluxe versions of these three as well. But for now, I think that works pretty well. And then here he is again with the previous Thrilling 30 Cosmos from the Legends scale. So you can see, you know, obviously a lot bigger to kind of match what they've been doing with the mini bots, and definitely like this was a really nice Cosmos design and is a nice little redesign of the character, but this one definitely nails the G1 accuracy just like a whole lot more, especially like looking at the head sculpts here. They made him look like, you know, a little bit cooler, I think, than Cosmos typically looks. Whereas, you know, he's got the kind of like dumpy looking dome there, which I think is, you know, still pretty accurate. I like both of these figures for what they are, but I think definitely this is the one that kind of takes the cake in terms of G1 accuracy. So yeah, that's what they look like together. And then, you know, I figured we can bring on the stand here. I was going to show it off how you could just like take one of these clips and clip it in like that before I noticed that it had actually the little peg hole in the back there. So you can actually plug a stand in there, and he does have weapon ports on the bottom of his feet here. So if you have blast effects, you can, you know, take those. I chose these ones, but you can choose whichever ones you want, and put him in a little flight pose there, which I think makes for a pretty cool little display, all things considered. I like that. You know, I'm probably just going to put him standing on my shelf, but it's nice to have that option with the little, I like that they've been, you know, actively and purposefully putting the little ports there for the figure stands. I didn't even realize that he had one of those until this review. So, but yeah, no, pretty good figure overall. I think that despite my kind of minor quibbles with it, also he didn't really talk about it, he does have kind of just huge empty hollow sections in his arm here, which like, you know, part of it is like, you know, usually that doesn't bother me so much, but I think with him, it just stands out because his forearms are like so big that it's like really easy to see that there's just these giant hollow sections. And like, you could print out some fillers or buy some fillers to go in there. Obviously, you'd have to leave some kind of hole so that the hand could still flip in, but I think there's still a lot of kind of free space here that you could cover up with a little 3D printed part if you were so inclined. And I'm sure some third-party companies will make something to that effect. And, you know, I think that would be worth it, because like, I think even if there's still like a hollow section for where his hand has to fold in, it would improve the look to kind of cover up the rest of the unnecessarily hollow space. But, you know, it's not really that big a deal. And honestly, it looks a lot worse in photography than it does in person when you're actually like holding the figure in 3D space. So it doesn't bother me that much. But yeah, no, despite, like I said, despite my minor grievances, this is a really, really nice figure. And I'm definitely glad I was able to pick him up, because he's definitely one of the ones that has been, you know, more anticipated from the Velocitron line, and he's like one figure per case, I guess, in the assortment when they actually send them out to Walmart. So people were pretty worried that it was going to be another like, you know, Netflix Bumblebee and Soundwave situation where it was just really hard to actually find the figure and that people would just buy it and scalp it. Thankfully, I went to Walmart today just to actually pick up a couple groceries, and I was like, well, I'll swing by the toy aisle, and I found some of the Velocitron figures, which I was really excited for, because I had a number of them on pre-order, but Cosmos was sold out before I actually was able to finish my order. So this was the only one that I didn't like have guaranteed at some point. So it was nice to pick those up then and cancel the pre-orders. But yeah, this is a pretty good figure, and definitely would recommend if you're able to find him. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Velocitron Speedia 500 Collection Autobot Cosmos.